The Locked On Podcast Network presents the NBA Big 3 in 30. The three biggest stories in the NBA from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The NBA Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest story in the NBA.
You may have heard, but Tom Thibodeau is no longer the coach of the New York Knicks.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast.
Tom Thibodeau fired on Tuesday, mere days after the Knicks getting eliminated from the Eastern Conference Finals, before the NBA Finals even start, which is crazy to think about. But here we are. We have lots to talk about. We're going to talk about what led to this firing, how we feel about it, what's next for the Knicks, how this coaching search could potentially go, candidates that we are interested in from our vantage point here as podcasters. But first, we want to thank you all for making Locked On Knicks your first listen today and every day, whether you're checking us out on your favorite podcast platform or taking in the sights and sounds on YouTube. We appreciate you making us part of your daily routine. Make sure you hit the auto download function on your favorite podcast app or the notification bell on YouTube so you never miss an episode. All right, Gavin. So for anyone that missed it, if you want to go hear my semi-immediate thoughts on the trade yesterday, I recorded something after work yesterday as quickly as I could, given my work day, and got something out yesterday. So I got some thoughts out here already. So I'll toss it to you. Where is your mind at as we're recording this now? I don't know, 9 hours after the news that Tibbs got fired. What's your reaction? How are you feeling? What's the temperature in Gavin land right now?
Yeah, speaking of Gavin land, just for people watching on YouTube, I'm recording this in my dad's apartment without my ring light because I did not expect to be doing a podcast today. I do feel like the look that like I just escaped a cave I was trapped in for months is the best way I can honor Tom Thibodeau, because I think that was his general vibe, and that was both a real asset to the Knicks and maybe a little bit of a negative at times. But my initial reaction was excitement, and maybe that's somewhat of a selfish perspective. And I think people know where we were both at on this situation, which was appreciation for what Tom Thibodeau had done. And I'm sure at times I did not lean into that enough. Certainly, I think in the early years, and especially that 22-23 season, I probably didn't lean into that enough. But also I think a readiness for something new, and a little just like honestly feels like a relationship where I think a lot of Knicks fans were ready for a breakup, where there was a lot of good there and you appreciated the good and you wish the person well, but the bad is just too painful to continue to overlook. And that's where I came out on this. And I think I want to start with what I would argue is a argument for Tibbs, which is that there's real risk here, right? Like what Tom Thibodeau did, we've highlighted it a bunch of times, but I think it's worth reiterating. Like, the guy built a culture out of thin air, along with Leon Rose, along with Julius Randle, along with Jalen Brunson, right? All those guys deserve an incredible amount of credit, but like, this is a team that sucked for 20 years. That was the embarrassment of the NBA. The David Fizdale smiling meme, I think, was the enduring image of our first 2 years or so doing this podcast. And honestly, when we started, like, my hope of this team being good was Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving picking the Knicks, and Zion Williamson, the Knicks getting the number one pick and drafting him, which obviously probably would not have worked out very well and was misguided. And instead, it was Tom Thibodeau doing something I couldn't possibly imagine, which was organically building a great culture and a great team. And like, to me, that was beyond my wildest dreams. I've been James Dolan pilled to thinking like, all right, like the magical free agent has to pick us. And Tom Thibodeau was like, nope. I mean, it kind of happened with Brunson, but it was more so about building a culture. It was building a philosophy, getting the right people in the building, drafting well, and like slowly building through the middle, which was supposed to be impossible. And I think you and I so many times talked about the stupidity of, and because in part of Tom Thibodeau and what he brought to the table, the Knicks were able to do that. And there's real risk here, despite the talent they've accumulated in the front office that they have, which isn't going away. that you hire someone that undoes a lot of that, and maybe you bring in greater tactical versatility in offense, and someone who believes in numbers like net rating and finds ways to get more shooting on the floor and finds ways to optimize the lineup, but you lose the like defensive, cultural toughness backbone that created some very real magic for this team. And with that gone, the other stuff ultimately doesn't get you as far as you got with Tom Thibodeau. I have some reasons for why that ultimately doesn't matter and why the Knicks had to fire him anyways. But I'm curious your thoughts on that and the world where like it's very plausible that the Knicks end up with a coach worse than Tom Thibodeau.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that I didn't really go over much in my solo thing. So I'm glad you brought it up. Like there is, that's kind of part of giving Tibbs his flowers, right? Is
Yeah.
like, and I guess I sort of did that. Like I did make sure to pinpoint like, hey, like, he brought this team back. You know what I mean? Like he brought them back from the brink, really, when you think about it. Like they had not been good for a long time. Like we were like ready to give Mike Miller the head coach job because like he had led them to like almost a half a season of 500 basketball. Like
I will say, to continue the relationship analogy, that's like a girl smiling at you in the subway and saying, I got to marry her. That's never going to happen again.
pretty
That was
much.
cool.
Yeah, that was like that was the Mike Miller experience in
Yeah.
a nutshell.
Shout out
And
Mike Miller. Hope he's doing well.
I hope so too. I loved Mike Miller. I think wasn't he on the Thunder staff or something?
I can Google it. You keep going. I'll let you know.
Yeah, we'll figure out where Mike Miller's at. We gotta give him a shout out. But anyway, yeah, I mean, I think the point that you make is valid. Like, of course, there's risk with this. I think they finally reached the point where they acknowledged, like, I think we have the talent, and clearly the talent was not super happy with Tibbs based off the exit interviews and the fact that they apparently did all these thorough exit interviews with every single player, and like players must have come back and been pretty venomous towards Tibbs, if I had to guess, for them to make this decision so quickly. That being the case, like I think it's the risk you have to take. That's kind of along the lines of what you were saying too. Like you can't. Sure, I mean, I guess you could stick with him, but then is the goal to ultimately be like the mid 2000s Hawks or whatever, like where you make some second round appearances? I mean, the mid 2000s Hawks never made a conference finals, but like, similar vibes is just like making the playoffs every year, winning a series or whatever, and then like having whatever get in your way. Except for like, I know that you feel the same way, like having had a taste of potentially having a finals on the radar. It's like, hey, I think this team actually had the talent. I just think that they were lacking a bit in what was available execution wise because of Tibbs being coach. And for that reason, I think it's worth taking that risk. And, the one thing I will say in regards to Leon Rose, and like we'll talk about more about candidates in a moment, and, about like the big name, I think in both of our minds is Johnny Bryant right now, that, has ties to the organization already and everything else. But I think the big thing for Leon when it comes to protecting himself against potentially having a drop off after Tibbs is making sure that that bench is really filled out with, like, if you go with a younger candidate, a first time head coach or just a younger head coach in general, filling out that bench with good established personalities, established coaching figures that can help guide that person along. And that should allow for hopefully not having much drop off after Tibbs. And to your point, the whole point that you get a culture setter is that he sets the culture, right? And culture doesn't go away. Like culture doesn't just like Tibbs is gone and now suddenly guys being in the best shape of their lives goes away, or the various things that he instilled in guys about, like, just obviously I think Tibbs was a good motivator in terms of like never giving up when you're down 20 or whatever, like just kind of rallying the troops in that way. That kind of stuff isn't going to go away. That's the kind of stuff that kind of lives on beyond when someone is not the coach anymore. It's more just the minutia is where Tibbs got exposed, and I don't think there was a lot of room for improvement there. And I think that's why, like, you have to take the chance on getting better, because otherwise you risk just running on the treadmill. And actually, I'll use a term that a friend of both of ours we haven't seen in a while, because he's been a little out of the Knicks content scene. But our buddy Jack Huntley, who used to write for the Strickland, had a term that he coined that was the treadmill of mediocrity. And I don't know if the Knicks were quite on the treadmill of mediocrity anymore, but they risked being on the treadmill of good, not great. And I think they're taking a chance of trying to get off of that and strive towards greatness now.
Yeah, I'm on the same page as you. And to counter my previous point, Tim Bontemps, who is a reporter for ESPN, I mostly enjoyed his low post appearances in the past, put out what I think was a pretty dumb tweet. He said, quote, "It is pretty hard to justify firing a coach who won 4 playoff series in 3 years when the Knicks had won a single playoff series in the prior 22 years." And to that point, that is a sentiment I know of a decent portion of Knicks fans. I'm sure it's the sentiment of some of the people watching this. So I apologize to all of you who agree with that logic. To me, that is the greatest, most loser mentality of all time. It is saying because you sucked in the past, you should never hope for more than what you currently have. And it's a mentality that sets people back in their lives all the time. People with that mentality, right? Well, this is better than what I had before. It's all right, man, it still might not be a good relationship or a good job. And you should always strive for more. And I think we're on the same page that this team is capable of winning a championship. I think this team was probably capable of winning a championship this year. And I think there's a pretty good chance they have a better roster next year. If you just look at what happened in the playoffs for the Knicks this year, people always talk about luck is a necessary requirement to win a championship. I think the Knicks might have had their lucky season this year, right? We've said it before, but all these guys are smack dab in the middle of the prime. There's not a guarantee that any of them are going to be better basketball players than they are today. Maybe they will. Maybe Brunson is just that kind of worker and he's on a Steve Nash-like trajectory. Maybe Towns somehow continues to refine his defense into his 30s. The track records for bigs 30+ is obviously not great. Maybe Towns' skill set gives him an edge in that. We can go on and on and on. But they had an extraordinary season from a health perspective, right? Far and away the healthiest season of OG's career. It was the most games Cats played in the last 6 seasons. They get to the Eastern Conference Finals and they still have, unless I'm forgetting about someone, literally their entire rotation healthy, which is pretty remarkable. And there, you could say, all right, well, 3 of the other 4 teams in the East also essentially had their rotation fully healthy, or in the conference finals had the rotation fully healthy. But those are the teams that get there. We saw the injuries across the NBA, right? Tatum hurt, Dame hurt, Steph hurt for Golden State. The Knicks got lucky from a health perspective. And I know people don't want to say that's why they beat Boston. I'm not sure that's why they beat Boston. I don't think it hurt the Knicks that Kristaps Porzingis, who absolutely killed them, was the one guy they couldn't match up with, was a zombie during that series, and the Celtics had bad shooting. Maybe the Knicks would have won that series anyways. Maybe the Knicks beat Detroit, regardless of Isaiah Stewart being out. But 3 games in that series, they win that are decided by 3 or less. And I know Detroit won 2 close games in that series. My point is there was some randomness in the Knicks getting as far as they did. And I'm really happy that Leon Rose in this front office, I think, recognized, while Tibbs certainly deserves some credit, and I think made some really meaningful adjustments against Boston and to some extent against Indiana, though they were too late, that the fact that they made the conference finals did not mean that it was a prerequisite to bring Tom Thibodeau back. And it was an automatic that Tom Thibodeau deserved to come back. And I think there was a recognition that the process throughout the year and throughout the years has been imperfect from Tibbs. And maybe you won't find a coach where it's perfect, but I think you can get it closer to that than what Tom Thibodeau has, because there were certain predilections holding Tom Thibodeau back.
Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so stop just managing your money and start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year.
Where the Pacers can find some advantages.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast.
Looking at advantages the Pacers could look to get in their upcoming series. A lot of talk about Pascal Siakam before the Cavs series, Tyrese Halliburton early in the playoffs, where the Stars will have nice, cozy matchups, Miles Turner's little advantages. Less of that stuff against a talented Thunder team, but still a few that the Pacers absolutely have to look at against OKC. Eddie Garrison from 107.5 The Fan and the Pacers and Colts radio networks joins to help get to all of it today. So much we dive into strategy-wise that the Pacers have to be sharp in this series. Great conversation. Eddie's the best. Let's just get right to it. Getting ever so close to the Pacers' first NBA Finals game in 25 years. The mighty Thunder await the Pacers. You heard me yesterday with Rylan Stiles previewing the series today, as is tradition, as I've done for every round of this playoffs, which means this is the fourth time this year looking at the advantages the Pacers could use or find in their series. Admittedly, a little harder to find them this time, which speaks a lot to the Thunder and their talent and their defense. And I can't do it alone. I need somebody else who knows the Pacers inside and out. You know him from 107.5 The Fan and the Pacers Radio Network and the Fever Radio Network and Colts Corner. I think I got it all. It's Eddie Garrison. Eddie, hello to you, the radio czar who has pets that may speak up and want to voice their opinions on this. And one of our internets is bad. It's mine. How are you, sir?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you, Tony, for having me on. I know there are more qualified people to be on your podcast right around this time with more, insight than myself, but I'm glad you asked me to come on.
Eddie, I always trust your opinions. I would not have you on if I did not trust your opinions. Take that to heart.
Glad someone got lose mine.
Eddie, you're 27? 26?
Turned 27 in September, yeah.
Okay, so you were 2 the last time the Pacers reached the stage, which is why it's so important that they take as much advantage of this opportunity as they can, and that is exactly what we're talking about today. The Thunder have the best relative defensive rating of any team in a very long time compared to the rest of the league. Their defense is very good. Most of these series so far, and this episode I talked about, who's going to guard Tyrese? He might have a good matchup in this series. Or, Pascal Siakam seems like he could be guarded by someone too small or too thin. Or, hey, Miles Turner's going to be able to stretch the floor against this pretty immobile big. It always felt like there was a hole in the other team's defense for the Pacers to exploit, and they generally done a good job of that. And I do see one I want to get to here, but that was not as easy to do in this exercise. So I will punt to you first. Eddie, you get the ball on the 20. Give me the first advantage you can see for the Pacers in this series.
I think when you look at these two teams and you look at the starting five, you've got Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and then if it's Lou Dort, Alex Caruso, and then Jalen Williams, Isaiah Hartenstein, and Chet Holmgren. So their primary 6 right there. There's only like 2 of them, J-Dub and SGA, that initiate the offense. Like they're going to bring the ball to court, or they're going to initiate whatever actions they want to get into or whatever set they want to run. Whereas when you look at Indiana, they want to play the random style that you've talked about throughout the course of the last 3 years, ever since they acquired Tyrese Halliburton, and pretty much the last month or two, ever since everyone's been, watching the Pacers in the playoffs. And I think with that kind of ability that they have, where it could be Andrew Nembhard, where it could be Tyrese, where it could be Pascal, or it could be TJ McConnell, where it could be Benedict Mathurin, whomever. Initiating the offense gives them such an advantage, just because you don't know which guy is going to be bringing up the court, which one's going to get them in whatever action they want to get to. And it allows them, the Pacers, from a defensive perspective, when you look at Oklahoma City, to evaluate what they're trying to do and try to counter it before, as you're pushing the ball up the court. And I think that's the other part of it too. Like with all those guys that want to initiate offense for Indiana, Oklahoma City will let them push the ball up the court, because Oklahoma City is willing to play at the speed at which the Pacers are. So That's kind of like the first thing that stands out to me. What do you think?
Yeah, more creators is a good way to put that. Now, here's the thing. Shai can handle it at like any volume, right? He won MVP for a reason. He's a beast. J-Dub has had an up and down playoffs. So let's start with this. Any Thunder listeners, the Thunder are incredibly good on offense. I am not saying what I'm about to say that they are a bad offense, that they'll not be able to score it all in the series or anything like that. I do remember, because Wes Goldberg and I did Locked On NBA the night that the Thunder eliminated the Grizzlies. They swept Memphis, and we were both like, yeah, they played good, but like their half-court offense was kind of like, a lot of that series, right? They had a miracle comeback in Game 3. Game 4 they had a couple rocky games, right? They won. Their defense is incredible. Best thing left in the playoffs. And then they played Denver, and they won that series too, but at times I felt the same way. So if the Pacers can handle like the most important thing, task line item number 1 for them every game, which is not turn the ball over, and the game becomes half court adjacent. Because I agree with you that the pace advantage the Pacers typically have will be neutralized to some extent, not completely, but some extent in the series. If it's a half court game, having more initiators will be very important. Having ways to score on every trip will be even more massive than it would have been in other series where it's just like, yep, run fast, doesn't matter who's bringing it up. Like, and we've seen guys on big stages, Andrew Nembhard, who I'll get to in a second, Aaron Nesmith in game one, although he wasn't really initiating, McConnell, Siakam, lots of guys can do important things, start the action, finish, whatever. I do think that will matter and be an advantage for the Pacers if they can take care of the ball, which is obviously like one of the most important things to happen. The Timberwolves, every game, were like, hey, we got to take care of the ball better. And they never did. They never did the entire series. If the Pacers actually do it, I totally agree that having lots of initiators will at least be a way for them to put stress on the Thunder defense, especially when they have like Caruso and J-Dub and Cason Wallace are out there. Like how? Like it's just, they're hard to get advantages with unless you have lots of guys who can initiate.
Yeah. And then from like you just talked about turning the ball over from any other perspective, like I think it's Caitlin Cooper who hits on this like frequently. Yes. Talking about how Oklahoma City can turn defensive rebounds into fast break. I don't know if it's her or for somebody else, but that's another thing too. Is like if the Pacers, or I guess win, because it's not a matter of if, when they miss shots, they got to sprint back. They got to get back to defense because Oklahoma City will push it the other way just because that's an advantage that they have.
They're like the Pacers. They love the hit-aheads. The Pacers are not a good offensive rebounding team, and some of that's personnel, but some of that is that they do what you just said. They do race back very quickly, basically at every chance they can get back on defense. That's like helped them be better on defense this year. Their transition defense is passable and not awful like it was last year. So that will be critical. And like it's so easy to just say that, like get back, find your man. But like last series, especially when the guy you're guarding is never guarding you, that's hard. In this series, I think it'll be a little bit more standardized as to who's guarding who in terms of position groups, at least in a way that won't be so confusing. But yes, that will also be a part of it. Is there will be lots of opportunities. If you don't score to get back, you gotta not let that be a way for them to create. You gotta force it to be Shea as often as possible. And J-Dub's had like boomer busty playoffs, if that makes sense. He's had some okay games, but it feels like he's either like, wow, he was awesome, he won them that game, was a huge part of why, or like, hey, they need more from that guy, right? With very little in between. So I do agree with that. That kind of blends into my point. Not a lot of blend, but a little bit. I was trying to go back through the games that these two teams played in the regular season and look at like who I felt like, oh, that guy had a favorable time doing the things they're good at, or at least like had chances to look impressive. And one guy ended up rising to the top, and that was Andrew Nembhard. In these games, there was no Chet. He did not play against the Pacers at all, right? So it's not super easy to like know exactly how the Thunder will try to align. My guess is that it'll be bigs on bigs and guards on guards. So maybe Shea is on Aaron Nesmith. But a lot of regular season reps for Andrew Nembhard against Shea and against Cason Wallace. And he played very well against the Thunder. He was able to create. He was able to score. And that was meaningful in games where like Lou Dort is all over Tyrese Haliburton and making Haliburton's life as hard as possible, as hard as anyone reasonably can, defending Tyrese Haliburton. It's not easy to do. So it's not necessarily an advantage, but going to your point about having lots of creators, I think the fact that the weakest defender the Thunder will start will be guarding a player on the Pacers who is comfortable initiating in some way, or at least is willing to mix it up, set screens, go to the rim. That is the point that they can pick at. And I wonder, even if it's not Shea on Nembhard, if it's Shea on Nesmith, if it's still something that, like we saw last series, the Pacers just continually put him in actions over and over and over on defense. Maybe it's not super successful. Shea's not a bad defender. He's like maybe the worst defender of their starting five, but he's not a bad defender. But this gets to the wear-down effect part of this that the Pacers have been so good about in the playoffs. It's like by the end of the game, these guys are gassed. If you can make Shea tired, it's like your best chance of slowing him down on top of your defense. So my answer of Andrew Nembhard is if Shea is guarding him, he'll be very important. If Shea's not guarding him, he'll be somewhat important, just to have that kind of player who can finish and has had success against OKC and can make life harder for a very key Thunder player.
The NBA Finals are here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action right now. When you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if that first bet wins. I love how FanDuel makes betting easy. Whether it's picking your favorite team or diving into player props, from three-pointers to steals to assists, there's so many ways to bet your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. Place that first $5 bet on the Cowboys, for example, who we'll talk about later. Dallas plus 340 to go under 5.5 wins this season. If you're not bullish on the bounce back from Dak, I like those odds. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today.
What are the storylines to watch in the NBA Finals between the Thunder and the Pacers?
You are Locked On Thunder, your daily Oklahoma City Thunder podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We're talking storylines, we're talking predictions, we're talking how the Thunder got here. When it was official at Game 5 of the Western Conference Finals that the Thunder would be at this spot, what did you think about? What did you reflect about whenever the Thunder officially made it back to the NBA Finals for the first time since 2012?
I personally thought about my first couple of years on the Thunder beat. I started covering the Thunder in the 2019-2020 season. Obviously, super fun team, made the playoffs, interrupted by COVID, bubble. And then after that, the rebuild really began in earnest. And, that first year without fans was no fun for anybody. And then they win 20-something games the next year. And then ever since then, it's just been this, I was about to say slow build, but it has been a rapid rise to get to this point, from making the play-in a couple of years ago to the playoffs last year, and now in the NBA Finals. It's just kind of crazy to wrap my head around it, to be honest, Rylan.
It's tough, from covering daily pods and articles about Josh Hall to now talking NBA
Your
Finals.
guy, Josh
My
Hall.
guy, Josh Hall. I love Josh Hall, Jalen Horde. Those guys were fun and interesting to cover at the time, but now we're here. I had a similar reflection point of just taking over this show in May 2020, whenever there was literally no basketball, to the Pokus of the world and the rebuild, and then they're here in the blink of an eye, and a reflection point of just how everything that they set out to do, they did, from the way that this team plays basketball to the kind of identity that they've stuck to on and off the court. It's pretty impressive. I mean, you have Mark Daigneault as the head coach, and whenever he was hired, people assume that he was kind of a lame duck hire, but us being closer to the situation knew that it's not really how the Thunder operate. They got the coaching decision right. They got the players that they've brought in right. And now they're here with a really window of opportunity to have sustained success at this level for quite some time. And this is also the best chance for the Thunder to ever win a championship. And it's not saying much because they've only had 2 chances in the finals, but the Pacers are a really good team and they're capable of winning this series, but they're not the desperate Miami Heat team that had LeBron and D Wade and Chris Bosh, those Heatles that couldn't afford to lose 2 straight NBA finals. So Joe, when you look at this series, obviously the Thunder are the heavy favorites. They're still young, and it would still be pretty improbable that, led by a number 2 and number 3 option who are at the below 25 years old, to win a title would still be really impressive. But how do you wrap around the pressures of being the favorites versus the kind of normal construct of the NBA life where you're not expected to be this good this fast?
Well, you mentioned the 2012 Heatles. It's kind of crazy thinking back to that series with as young as the Thunder were, that OKC was actually favored in that series, a slight favorite. It doesn't make any sense in retrospect, but now they are overwhelming favorites, and rightfully so, against this Indiana Pacers team. And you're right in that the pressure is on the Thunder because the Thunder is the heavy favorites, because the Pacers are this feel-good story. But the Thunder is also this feel-good story, a team that made it to the NBA Finals far sooner than anyone with any amount of reason in their brain could have predicted. I think it's kind of like if this was Thunder Celtics or Thunder Cavs, maybe we're thinking about it a little differently. but because it's Thunder Pacers, it's like all of a sudden the Thunder is this big bad bully, and in a lot of ways they are with how they've just destroyed teams this year. But at the same time, it's like they're such overwhelming favorites that we're not talking about them being a historic outlier as far as their youth and inexperience to get to this point. But I'm with you. Like, you can't really dwell on that in this series because the window seems like it's going to be open for a long, long time. But this might be the best chance during this run the Thunder ever has because of the opponent and because of the Thunder situation right now.
Yeah, I mean, you've gotten to this point fully healthy. You're facing a team that is a quality opponent, but they're not the juggernaut from the other conference that you're expecting to face. Like whenever we were doing preseason stuff, it seemed like a collision course to Boston and OKC. We may never get a Boston OKC finals because of the Tatum injury and because, at that point you're pushing it out 2 or 3 years, and the NBA world has been turned upside down 5 times in the last 2 or 3 years and will be again the next 2 or 3 seasons. So this is a huge opportunity for the Thunder, and opportunities that this young team has had before and that they've handled with a lot of grace before. I mean, Mark always makes the comment that they are so uncommon, and that is very true. They are just an uncommon bunch, and they'll have to do it again. They'll have to continue to be uncommon in this way. But I want to talk about the storylines and the X factors from this series, according to you. But when in this season did you kind of fully expect the Thunder to achieve those preseason goals of, hey, what if they can make the leap to the West Finals, to the NBA Finals?
That's a good question. I don't know if I can pinpoint it to one thing. I remember before the season, my prediction was Celtics Nuggets. So obviously I was wrong about that. But I think as these numbers started to pop up that spoke to the Thunder's just dominance, whether it's the point differential, the, defensive rating, and every team to have reached this mark has, gone on to play in the NBA Finals. Most of them have won the NBA Finals. When they started reaching those historical benchmarks is when I thought, yeah, I almost expect this team to reach the finals. But in the back of my head, I always had that other part of me saying, this team's too young to reach the finals. So it was those conflicting ideas throughout the year, but they're just so consistent. Shea was at the top of his game that, going through the West, entering the playoffs, I thought they were going to go all the way. And in some ways I underrated the Nuggets. I thought that would be more of an easy series. At the same time, I thought the Wolves would be a tough series, and the Thunder just took care of them easily. And they've just been a buzzsaw.
Thunder have been a buzzsaw. They've been this juggernaut that I think that Nuggets series really helped them grow up. And it is one of the first storylines is just how both teams handle this opportunity in this spotlight, because the Thunder have had to get here by navigating the best player in the world, Nikola Jokic, by taking on a Minnesota Timberwolves team that does have some teeth, and they were able to dispatch them in 5 games by taking away their top 2 options. And Indiana has gotten here through a Bucks team that didn't really have a ton of guys besides Giannis, but the team, the entire season for Milwaukee has been a bit of a disappointment. They took on the Cavs, who were limping a little bit, but still an impressive series win. And then New York, who hadn't beat a good team until the playoffs, and they, to their credit, handled the Boston Celtics even with a fully healthy Tatum. That Tatum injury did not help and aid the Knicks' chances of that series. So it's a unique place. Indiana has not faced a team this good, especially defensively, all playoffs long. They're going to have to adjust to that.